So this episode that we're talking about, episode 6, is the first book of Sin because the Mom Talk ladies are going to Sin City.
Vegas. Ooh. I feel
So
like
exciting.
it really picks up from here. I
There's some climaxes building at this point. Yeah, they really know where they're going with the adventure by this point.
yeah. The episode starts off with Whitney unfollowing the group on social media. I'm guessing.
Right.
And
And so, well, there's multiple things. She unfollows everyone except Macy,
yes,
which I think is distinct, but then she leaves the group chat also.
yes, she leaves the group chat. She unfollows everyone. They have a big reaction to this.
Well, and Macy has a big reaction. Like, I'm always talking about how fair I think Macy is, but Macy is sort of like, Whitney is known to be a little bit, what does she say? Not erratic, spontaneous, not spontaneous,
Impulsive.
impulsive, but never this impulsive.
She said this is another level. Yeah. And maybe because the cameras are on them.
Right. Looking for drama.
Yeah.
I know I kind of found that to be funny that this was considered so impulsive because I do think at times I underestimate the fact that like they are in business together, they are forming a brand, they're on a show, they're like trying to do all these things. And so at this point it feels like Whitney is antagonizing the process in a way, I think. And maybe that's what, Macy's referring to.
She's trying to make a statement for sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess I don't know how much we covered this in the last episode, but at Layla's divorce party, Jesse sits Whitney down and I thought was very direct. Whitney thought was very mean. Sometimes those can be confusing. I'm not sure Jesse was trying to be kind, but I feel like she was being direct. She wasn't calling Whitney names. She was saying everyone's talking about you. Your behavior is being seen in this way. Like she
Mhm.
was just a very direct, I felt.
Yes.
Whitney did not like that.
Mm-mm. No. I thought Jesse did it in a kind way, like ish. I mean, as kind as you can be in telling someone that everyone's really unhappy with you. I didn't think she seemed nasty about it or over
Yeah.
the top. But yeah, Whitney was upset.
And so their reaction to her unfollowing, like somebody says in the background, like "bye, bitch," like was just this like fine then,
Mhm.
which is really I think what Whitney hoped would happen to Taylor from episode 2 or 3 on.
Yeah, I feel like Whitney, and I can't decide because I think she's smart. I think she's really smart. I think she does a good job at, like, she's a great TV villain. Like, I think she's great. She makes great television. So I think, like, she knows what she's doing, but also at the same time, I can't decide if I think she knows what she's doing or if it's that she's really trying to scramble and figure out a way how to change up the dynamics and maybe like to her favor. And I and so I don't know if these are like they seem like attempts to try to maybe get a reaction from the girls. It doesn't seem to be working. It actually seems to maybe confirm how everyone has been feeling about her, at least the past couple of episodes. So the divide kind of increases.
Yeah, she'll reveal more about herself and sort of like how she's processing this also later in this episode and in future episodes. But I mean, it is interesting. I think you've referred a couple of times to like the good TV villain, and I don't think of that. So are you saying that Whitney is being smart? She's staging herself, or she's taking on a persona for clout, for or strategically for like likes or whatever it is that she's after?
So I don't think she wants to be the TV villain. Like, I really don't think she wants to be that.
Okay.
But I also do think that, at least in my observation with my Bravo shows and the Real Housewives, I like to think that people aren't playing or they're pretending to be someone that they're not. But I do sometimes think that some individuals, like, their behaviors are a little bit more exaggerated than what they would be, but yet it is still sort of similar to who they are. Like, they're not um pretending to be someone that they're not, but maybe they would not, they like, increase like the heat scale a little bit, like make it a little bit spicier than they would normal day to day for the kid. And so some of what I sort of think like that the awareness of the cameras and your impact on a show, I think Whitney has that. I don't know. There are some people I don't know enough, but I do know that there are some people on like the Real Housewives, for example, that I think that they know that they're a villain and they just lean into it. Like they're because they're like this
Like it.
I
And
get
culture of reality TV.
yeah. Yeah.
They're like, I want you to hate me because that feels like love too.
That's any attention is good attention.
Right. So there's a little bit of back and forth between Whitney and Connor's endeavors in this episode because they're still part of the show, I guess, and then like what everybody else is doing.
Mhm.
So the first like activity in the show, I guess, after getting some like hair done, is what is this party? It is a pre-labiaplasty party thrown by Jessie, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think that's what she's calling it.
Well, I wrote in my notes a mocktail and vagina painting party. Now, I don't know if that's what they call it or if that's what I wrote in my notes. I watched this the first time. I want to say this is my third time. I rewatched the episode this morning in preparation for today. I think maybe this was my third time and I skipped over the labiaplasty parts. Like I was like, this is not I can't do it. I don't have a problem with it. I am like all for like you do whatever plastic surgery you want to do, but I cannot handle Jessie calling it her meat curtain. It makes me want to barf.
So I'm watching this and I'm feeling similarly where I'm like, okay, this is fascinating because you have this group of like Mormon women of different levels of whatever that means. Um, but this is like a little beyond the pale, I think, in terms of like what you would expect from any of them to have comfort with. And so you see the different levels of engaging with it, and Jen Affleck is just like squirming, which
Yes.
is funny because she's very sex positive. I had a time with Jesse. Say after the last episode, the way she confronted Whitney, I was like, okay, so there's some emotional intelligence going on there. I think she is in this episode being very pro sex, pro women's bodies. I think like being pro vulva, vagina, women's genitalia is actually like a concept that needs to be explored.
But at the same time, like I'm really curious about this because the labiaplasty, there's something that happens when you have multiple kids. I get it. It changes down there. But who is that for? Like this feels more like it's not for her. Like right? Like I mean maybe it is for her, but it does feel a little bit like is this through the male gaze that we are very worried like just porn in general and what your labia should look like. And I don't know. It felt a little I was not a fan, but also I am a fan of anyone doing whatever they want to do to make them feel good. So if that's what you want to do, go.
Sure.
I'm all for plastic surgery. I have no problem with that. I just didn't want to hear about it as much as we did. Like I just didn't care a ton. I don't dislike her. Like like on TV, there are definitely people, not on this show, but there are people that I like actively dislike watching. I don't dislike her. And I think that actually in this episode, I really like a lot of the things that she says and how she tries to sort of push the other women in a very, I think maybe challenge some of their like gendered roles and but I don't love watching her. I mean, it just doesn't like I don't get I'm not super interested, but I definitely was not interested in the labiaplasty.
So then the episode it does jump around a little bit, but we have a moment of Taylor talking to her mom about what's going on with Dakota. So we're kind of caught up. Now, did we talk about from the end of last episode? Dakota was like, Macy not liking me is a big problem. We need to hash this out. Or Taylor wanted to hash. I don't remember who instigated the conversation.
Yes, it was Taylor. I think Taylor pushing Dakota and Macy to talk. Macy did not seem to want to talk, and I don't remember how keen Dakota was on talking.
Yeah, but I think Taylor was like, listen, you're both in my life and got to figure this out and everything. So um, this will keep coming up because Taylor's just like Dakota is relentlessly trying to get her to marry him. Interesting. Mom didn't do any of her usual mistakes, I think, in this conversation that I can remember, but
Oh, I had a
Okay, tell me.
yes, yes. I found this to be very odd. So Taylor and her mom are sitting on a couch that looks to be at Taylor's house. They're talking about Taylor sharing that Dakota wants to marry her. Yes, yes. I was like, I cannot. And then I don't remember. So I think I like was sort of zoning out this morning when I was rewatching it at some point, but somehow it comes out like, let's call him. And then was it that Taylor called him and he didn't answer? And so then Taylor told her mom, you call him and let's see if he answers.
Tense moment when Taylor's like, he's not going to answer, and Taylor's mom's like, he's going to answer. But it goes to voicemail.
Yes. And so then her mom said, text him and say you're in labor. I was like, oh my God.
I know.
Like, oh, wait, like again, in her glow up, which love that. But oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Like that seems I'm not a Dakota fan. I mean, I think everyone has heard me say that multiple times, but I was like, that seems not nice. In terms of a ploy to get someone to answer the phone.
It's not, well,
Help me.
it's so manipulative. I mean, Dakota has the perfect response. He's immediately camera ready, even though it's just his voice. He's just like, "Hey, is she really in labor?"
What did he say? He was like, "Have you heard what happens like with the boy who cried wolf?"
And she says, "Yeah, but I'm just doing that this once." Like, excuse me. And so he's like, "I just wanted to make sure you knew about that story." Like, that's the most clever thing Dakota says all season.
I agree. I agree. It was messy. It was so messy. And mom seemed like just as into it. It feels very juvenile.
I want to lay this out so that you can like correct me. Or this is the way I understand Dakota and Taylor's relationship at this point. So Dakota wants to get married bad. He's pushing hard for it, too hard. Taylor is like very clear. I don't want to. I'm not ready. I don't want to rush this. Also, I'm like so incredibly pregnant. Can I just like of this baby? Like, can I not deal with everything else? And when he's really pressing her on why she won't get married, she says she doesn't know if he'll be loyal because he slept with another woman after they started dating, but before they were exclusive. That's my understanding. And I want to come back to that because to me, that reasoning is very tricky. And I think she'll say more about it later, but they were literally not dating. She was literally like, you can do what you want. He's like, I'm going to go hang out with the boys because he doesn't want to
Say,
going to go date somebody else because you're dating somebody, but they still don't want to hear that. So he doesn't tell her that he's going to see somebody else. They do sleep together. They later become official. He doesn't do it again, as far as I know, right? Like if that's the timeline. I think that's one timeline that we're playing with here. And she is like feels so betrayed that he lied about what he was doing that night so he could go sleep with somebody. And I'm like, he was going on another date and just didn't want to tell the other person he's kind of still casually dating. So that's the part where I'm feeling like Taylor's feelings I might also have a hard time with, where I'm like, you're mad about this thing that probably should have been within bounds. It's like the Ross and Rachel, we're on a break or not kind of, I mean, almost mentality. What are you?
so I sort of think a couple of things. One, there is this idea which I can understand. It's not fair because again, you can't help how you feel. I tell this to people all the time, but you feel what you feel. It doesn't mean that that feeling is fact or reality, right? So, like, if I walk into a room, I feel like everyone's staring at me. That does not mean that they are staring at me, but I'm feeling uncomfortable. So she feels upset. She feels betrayed. That doesn't necessarily mean that she was betrayed. And I think like that's like an important distinction. However, I also think that there is some idea where it's like you are professing your love, you want to have this family. If you felt like you found the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, wouldn't you just not sleep with someone else? And I think that's probably partially her thought, or at least partially like her
Sure.
her reaction, because there is this idea, and I think that and this is a whole, we could do another episode one day unrelated to this about, I think like, fairy tales and love stories and how I really think that that serves the man in heterosexual relationships uh, versus like what I think serves women,
Can't
but
wait for that episode.
yes, I'm happy to go there. But I do think that there is this idea of like you fall in love, you meet someone, you're like, this is it. I then don't go hook up with someone because I want to, because I like met my person, even if we have not said we're exclusive. And I don't think she's overtly stating that, and I don't even know if that's true. The other thing that I think about, so that might be part of it, but the other point that I think could be part of this issue is um maybe her gut is telling her, like, if you feel like you can't trust someone and you just feel like, okay, maybe you didn't cross the line, but I have a hard time trusting you. And it feels like maybe you're someone who might not be super steady and reliable and honest. Then that becomes a bigger issue versus someone who just says, listen, like I am going to hook up with other people right now because we are
Dating.
exclusive. And so, but when we do, I will stop if we do. I think sometimes like intuition can tell you something. So possibly she's her intuition, her gut, this hesitancy to get married is hard to describe. So it's easier to sort of point to that as an example versus
That's interesting.
feel like I have a hard time trusting you and I can't really explain why. Like that. And I mean, that's happened to me before with
Yeah,
people.
I 100% agree. Like, we don't know what her intuition is telling her, how much is part of that, but I'm about to, throughout this episode, point at like pretty much everything else Dakota does is a red flag. So, this is the most grace I can give him. So that is a great point, though, to think of like, I need to point at something, but I also think it's funny that, yeah, I'm defending Dakota in this moment where I'm sort of like, he found this loophole where they weren't officially, it wasn't written like that sort of thing. But I do think there are people who maybe like internally have this process of like, until I'm committed, I'm sort of like, I can have intercourse that it doesn't feel very attached and that doesn't feel like it reflects on my feelings that are growing for somebody, like that sort of thing. And then there are certainly people who are like, I would never do that. Like if I were falling in love, I wouldn't be trying to get my last hurrahs in. And like that would not be part of it. Even if the technicality is that it's okay, that she would still sort of be like, that didn't make me feel awesome, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe pause the sleeping with your people you're dating until you kind of know who you might be deepening with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that like yes, he can do that. They were not exclusive. They agreed and verbally like it stated that we can do whatever we want right now. But I do think that you have to sort of tease apart like what is you can feel that way, but it doesn't mean that he actually did something bad.
Well,
But
there's a lot of things, right? Like when you break up with somebody, you are free to do what you want. But very often, if like the person you were just dating sleeps with somebody right away,
that's the
that
problem.
feels so bad. That's like our relationship meant nothing. And that, like it there. So, you have to be at least aware of how these things might impact somebody,
Yes.
even if you can sort of technically say this was, fair for me to do. But the other thing that I think is tricky in the conversation with Taylor and her mom, I can't even tell what they're talking about because Taylor's mom gets on the phone and is just like, you guys need to work this out. And in Dakota's mind, he's like, I'm demanding we get married, which is
Like,
the solution. And I think
yes.
mom agrees with that solution,
Yeah.
but Taylor's really sort of like, oh my gosh, just let her have the baby, dude. Like, just hold on.
So that's something I want to talk about, which maybe we will in a little bit, but the change in the urgency that Dakota has there, and from what we can observe just based on the episodes, there is a shift. And we could talk about this in a little bit because it comes up. So they're preparing for Vegas. Everyone, Venus Wendy.
So this is fun. We don't see all of the husbands very often, but we see Demi's husband for a little bit, and kind of we get a glimpse into just some of the dynamics of the couples. I mean, very brief glimpse. There's not a lot we can see, but just from this brief part, I'm kind of a fan of Demi's husband. He seems chill. He seems mature.
He was on The Bachelorette. Do you know
That's
that?
right. I remember hearing that. So he's kind of a celebrity-ish reality TV show celebrity.
I wouldn't say that, but he's been on reality TV before.
Okay. So at least he's, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I
And
like
then
him.
I do too, yeah. And Macy's husband is the chillest. I think he's my favorite just by virtue of him being like almost like no, everything's fine. She's like, let
Yeah.
me tell you what went down. He's like, oh, get the popcorn. Like he's just so chill,
Yeah.
which I think
I
speaks highly again of Macy.
Yes. Yes. They must have all had a discussion, all the ladies, about the possibility that they will be going to a Magic Mike show because they all kind of throw that out there to their husbands. So they're like, how would you feel if all of them? So Demi, Macy, Jen, all of
Mhm.
them. How would you feel if I went to something like a Magic Mike show? Demi's husband, kind of joked that was like, why would you like have a hamburger when you have a steak at home? But then he's like, do what you want, like have fun. I don't care. Macy's husband was like, I'm not jealous. Yeah, do it. Enjoy yourself. And then Zach, Jen's husband, was like, how do you think you'll feel as a single mom divorced with caring for two kids? Like that was actually said as a
It was. And he has this weird maniacal grin where I was trying to figure out, I'm like, is that his passable humor? But he means it, which is why her reaction, I think, is very much like, really? And it's so I love that this part is coupled with him also being like, "Hey, I want to show you this like shirt I got for gambling that hides my like neck vein that gives me away when I'm stressed." And
Is
that's
this
where
something that happens? Do you know about this? Like, can you
yeah,
observe someone's like
I
pulse?
think I doubt it. I think a big thing in poker is people have tells.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a given. When people
Yeah.
lie, they do certain things, and poker players can be really good at figuring it out. And then I think there are people who like have a bulging forehead vein or neck vein or whatever. So my assumption is it's a little bit specific to him that
So,
probably when he gets stressed, he just clenches and the blood is visible from space.
well, what's funny is all my romantasy books I'm reading now, because I can't stop, won't stop. Uh, they're always like the male heartthrob or whatever love interest will like notice internally the female's like pulse is quickening, and I'm like, is this a thing? Like, is this, because I thought it was just in my romantasy fantasy books, but turns out Zach says it's true.
It's true. He's like, when my blood is racing, you'll know it. I get real noisy about it, apparently.
I was like, apparently it is observable. Um, but I did kind of think so. I thought that dynamic, that conversation was very interesting, especially when the producers ask Jen, can we talk about Zach's gambling? And she's like, as long as you don't make him sound like an addict. And I'm like, you can't say that without now everyone thinks he's an addict. Like, just don't even introduce that. Just be like, yeah, sure. He likes to do it. Like he gets kind of excited about it, but it's not like a constant thing. It's like once in a blue moon. I don't know. That maybe would have been my response if I was trying to hide something, but said, well, as long as you don't make him look like an addict. Okay, well, you said that. So now we're all, and then they go to Jen telling him, I'll give you $2,500. And he's like, if I lose it, I won't gamble for the rest of the year. And she's like, I'm going to be really upset if you lose it. And she's telling him how much he can spend. He's talking about hiding his neck veins. So it's just,
Yes. So he's basically begging her for money to do his not good activity, right? His maladaptive activity that he can't fund himself while simultaneously being like, I don't know if I could trust you in Vegas. Like,
yes. You can't go to a Magic Mike show where you just watch men, half naked men, but I can spend all of our money. Like it feels very unfair, and there's a huge double standard, because maybe he wins and then that increases their wealth.
a lot of people gamble for fun. I know it's actually a big problem. It's created a lot of gambling addiction, but the sports gambling that's so easy to do from apps and different things. And I know that a lot of people gamble poker because it feels like there's a skill involved that you can
Yeah.
do, and so they may feel like there's more control or whatever. So like hobby that people can engage in. Obviously, it's fun, but for him to
You,
be demanding while also like give me money,
I agree. Can you play poker? You guys play like board games and stuff though. And like you guys like these are all of the rules. And then it's like that meme with a lady with like the math and like I'm like I can't I mean a hard time understanding the rules. That's how I am with poker. Like people have tried to explain it to me. I'm like, I can't follow this, but
that's funny.
my attention. Anyway,
You're very game oriented, yes.
I like it. I'm jealous.
I want to say this now so I don't forget. I don't think it's mean, but maybe it is. Zach looks almost exactly like a young Gary Busey. And that's all I can see when Zach is on the screen is Gary Busey.
See, I think he looks like the guy from Sister Wives. And I'm not saying because they're Mormon. So it's like the hair that's sort of long and like a little curly, but not like thick enough to like carry that length. And then white, like
Right.
white. Anyway. Everyone's okay with Magic Mike except for Zach.
They're going to Vegas because they are public figures, they're influencers. From the Mormon perspective, on the one hand, I do think there's like mixed ways that people feel about comfort with things like this. So, like going to an erotic show probably would technically, make a lot of Mormon people uncomfortable. And so I can see why Jen might be hesitant. But my take on Jen, like all through the vaginoplasty painting conversation or whatever, is she's there trying to be not a prude, right? Like she might not be steering the boat, but she's trying to be normal about it with everybody. And so this feels like probably one more of those where she's like, I mean, I'm not going to arouse myself. I'm going because it's just like a funny, dumb thing to do. Go see Thunder Down Under or Chippendales or whatever.
Magic Mike, yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Jen says Zach can be a bit controlling, but I haven't met anyone that loves me this much. And this is something that said by both Jen and Taylor multiple times about their partners. It feels still controlling and unhealthy and toxic. Like they're doing this because they love me so much versus like they love me so much that they trust me to make a healthy decision and that is healthy for our relationship and not cross the line. Uh, that is love. Not they love me so much that they get they feel threatened. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that sentence specifically is I care too much shows up a couple in the episodes. He cares too much. The problem is he cares too much. And it's strange because it's almost like if you took an abuser's like glossary, that would be in there. I
Yeah.
care too much is like code for I will hurt you and I will excuse myself as if this is love. I will explain to you that this is what love from me looks like. And it makes me wonder, like, are they hearing this so much that they believe it? Oh, they care too much. Like, media probably encourages that a little bit. To those watching and to like both of our straight male fans, or however many we might have, don't care too much. This is not like a good, like, this is not a good relationship.
No. And I think that there's something about like I have a reaction to, I can appreciate that they're probably, especially Jen, who's married with the two kids. Taylor's still sort of the early, like they're not married, they haven't had their baby yet, she's pregnant. And I do think that Jen's probably in like a tough spot.
Hmm.
But I do have sort of a reaction to people that don't just call it like this feeling this need to defend your spouse. I get, but I also think it's okay. It comes across to me as more difficult to connect to
Hmm.
versus like just saying they struggle with feeling jealous sometimes. We're trying to work on it. Like
Yeah.
just calling it versus like, let's not try to paint a pretty picture, wrap this up with a pretty bow and turn it into something it's not. Let's just kind of be honest about it. Like they struggle with this and I love them and we're trying to work on it. Like I can connect to that a lot more than they just love. I've never met someone that loves me more. Like
Well, and
that's
I want to know how they're working on it because the question I think that come well, so I think we might have mentioned this in an earlier episode that this is true in a lot of cultures. I think it's like especially true in the LDS culture. that women are put in charge of boys' feelings. And so first it's don't tempt them, right? The dress, walk, talk, and behave in a way that doesn't tempt them. And now it's like, oh, once you're in a relationship with it, now you know it upsets me. So don't do this, 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 and this because my jealousy. And so it's just like this continuation of her being responsible for his
Yes.
weakness.
Oh, I saved this. I saved two things on Instagram I'm going to read because it's relevant. It's from this one account called Boss Women Magic. Love
Nice.
it. They put, I'm a wife and my husband had to go shopping to prepare for the dinner I planned with my friends this weekend. As he's busy, I told him I babysit the kids for him while he got it done. That was the first one. The second one was, I really like this one. I'm a wife. I came home late after chatting with the girls to find my husband had bathed the kids, cooked and tidied up. When I spilled a drink setting the table, he got upset. I yelled, "You're impossible. I was just trying to help." I thought that was so funny.
So good.
I know, but I do think, yeah, like if you turn the roles around, it looks, yeah, a little bit different. But
So what starts to unfold? They're getting ready to go to Vegas. And it is interesting because the way this unfolds is so fascinating. The boys are not supposed to come. This is a girls' trip. It's a mom talk trick. There's a show that shows about them. And suddenly Dakota is going to go to Vegas and Zach is going to go to Vegas. Zach's going to go to Vegas to gamble, I guess. Dakota's going to go in case Taylor goes into labor, I guess, which is not a terrible reason. But that's
well,
not the reason.
that's not the reason. But also, Zach says he's coming not to gamble. He is going to gamble, but he's coming because Dakota asked him because Dakota is sober and he's going to Vegas and he wanted to have some that could kind of help him with accountability. So he has Zach there, but Zach is excited about the gambling. So that is the dynamic. Yeah.
So it is interesting to me. And again, I think you've really put into my head that the way they shoot this and edit, I don't want to take for granted. But Taylor shows up at the house. It's like things aren't good. Jen's listening. And whenever they express this like real concern, or there's a couple times in the episode, it cuts to Zach and he's sort of like grinning and smirking in a way. And I don't know what he's thinking, but because I'm already like growing a bias against him, I'm like, is he like, dumb women problems? This is inconsequential. Like, I feel this weird judgment where he's like, I have no idea if that's true. It might just be the way the producers edit it, but they
Yeah.
talk and he's just sort of there, like, recognizing he's part of the problem or the representation of the problem sounds familiar to him. I don't know.
So this was one part. Dakota is becoming increasingly more agitated, is how I would describe it, at this that their current status, their relationship status. What is going on there that like this increased urgency that seemed, again, it's he has this like frantic energy that did not seem present earlier during her pregnancy. Maybe it's always been there and we're just getting more of a glimpse in this episode. Maybe it has increased in intensity. And if that's the case, if it has increased in intensity, I've been wondering why. Like, what is going on that would make him feel more frantic? And so part of me is wondering if, like, when you think about power dynamics, so one, like social psych 101, the person with the most power is the person that cares less. Like that's often in generally like unhealthy relationships,
Right.
that is, but in general, if you don't care and the other person really cares, that person holds a little bit more power than the other. But she's pregnant. She's very pregnant. She is going to give birth in like 2 weeks, essentially. And I'm wondering if that she holds the power. One, she cares less than he does, but also she is carrying their child. And so if you care less and you're carrying his only child, what is that like psychologically doing for him?
Yeah, it's interesting.
After she gives birth, I would hypothesize that that shifts pretty quickly. Not to say that she cares more than he does, but I think he would feel freer to peace out a little bit more than he does now. And I don't know if that's because then he realizes like he has maybe more access to the baby. I don't know. That's my hypothesis. And I can't even really, like, I have not really spent a lot of time thinking about why I think that. So I can't really explain, but Anyway.
Well, it is interesting. With the part that I don't totally know. I mean, he's saying it, but I'm not sure on what level I understand it. But I wonder if there is any part of the religious influence where he doesn't want to have a baby out of wedlock and he cares a lot about that.
Mhm.
Um, so I can't tell if that is part of it. But what is so for, I mean, I think what you just said is like interesting to think about, like how that could be playing a part in it because urgency seems strange. Like the birth of the child, if anything, solidifies their connection and
Yes.
involvement. He already lives in the house. So
Yeah.
to really need this to happen right now when she's got just everything else possible to worry about isn't strategically smart for making her feel more ready, right? It's often what happens with attachment style is the thing that you want drives a behavior that makes the thing you want go further away. I do just want to say this. I think Layla says a super hilarious line, and I got to give props because usually nobody's funny. But Layla says this line when they basically show up at the house in Vegas and they're like, a couple of the guys are coming, and everyone's like, no, and whatever. And Layla's like, these men and their separation anxiety. I thought that was a funny jab because it's basically saying like this is not a normal level of like concern or involvement and it's annoying.
Yes. I like that too. They all get in the car. Well, all Jen, Zach, Dakota, and Taylor. They drive to Vegas. They meet the other people. At some point during this, Macy shares that she has a secret from her Sunday.
Can I just say
Yeah.
that the invention of Secret Sunday is brilliant? I'm kind of
Dinner.
like mad about how smart it is. It's like a
It's
post
very,
secret.
it's very Gossip Girl
It's very
esque. Gossip Girl esque. You know, like people would send things into Gossip Girl and it'd be like spotted Serena and Blair, like blah, blah, blah. And so
well.
XOX.
That is true because I was like, what a great idea for a website. But then the fact that people are on there name dropping, I'm like, this is a smaller community. It sounds like who's using it.
Yes. But I also thought it was very smart and entertaining. As someone who wants to you want to learn some things about people, like let's open this up, Sinner Sunday. But she finds out that someone said that she slept with Dakota before she knew that Dakota and Taylor were official.
Yes.
Macy is
To like, I'm not sure the timeline. Is it like before they were official or before she knew they were official or like whatever? So there's a little bit of a muddy in terms of what might have happened. But yeah, Macy's sitting on this info.
mm-hmm. So let's pause for a second. Um,
To the farm.
because they yes, with Whitney and Connor.
Yeah, yeah. Meanwhile, I'm enthralled by this Vegas episode, and then suddenly we find ourselves at a farm.
A self-sustainable homestead farm, self-sustainable living. And I was obsessed with this. I mean, one, I was really into the Vegas story, but so it was sort of hard. It's hard for me to like shift gears. Like I just like kind of want to stay there. But I was obsessed with the idea that one of them, probably Whitney, came up with this idea that there's no way that she would actually go for in real life. Like the smell she didn't like. They were commenting on the animals pooping.
Like, oh no.
Yes, like I think Connor actually commented on one of the animals like buttholes, like in the process. Like
The camera stayed on it for a while. I was kind of traumatized.
I just thought there's no way. But there is this idea of like Whitney is she gets upset, she moves to Hawaii, she comes back, she is leaving the group, she's constantly exiting when something's uncomfortable. Now she wants to do this self-sustainable living. And it doesn't really feel authentic from my observation. I don't know her, obviously, so it could be.
Sounds like to others also did not seem authentic because the producer poses the question like, what do you say about those who are saying this is just another version of Hawaii?
Yes.
To which she says, they're trying to frame it like I'm running away, but I'm removing myself from a toxic environment.
cue montage of like, I can't stay here. I can't stay here. I need to go. It's a fine line between do you want to stay in a toxic environment, an unhealthy environment, versus like, let's try to have uncomfortable but healthy conversations about our discourse. So I don't know.
Let's be real. There's two things I think that are important here. One is I think Whitney does experience herself as in the right. And I think there's reasons why she does, because I do think, like, that's a good reframe. I do think having boundaries and removing yourself from a toxic environment. In fact, in a minute, I'll get to where, like, maybe Jen Affleck should remove herself from a toxic environment if that's how she feels. You know, like, having good boundaries is good. So I think that's where Whitney is sort of like, oh, I'm pulling from this idea that I'm taking care of my boundaries. But what's funny is she criticizes like them. She's like, they would rather just not directly say things. And she's hurt because nobody's reached out to her. And so she interprets that as they would rather not work this out and just act like children. And it's like, Jesse talking to you was what that looks like, Whitney. Like,
Yeah.
that is them working it out. Then you leaving the group is your response to that. Like, you want them to do more labor, but you are not participating in like this healing here.
I sort of think it's interesting people that have not done a lot of therapy work, and I'm curious what you think that they like know these hot button therapy terms.
Like
Well,
boundaries.
boundary. I'm so sick of the word boundary. Like health, like in an appropriate context, great word. But the way some people use it is it's like too much, and or gaslighting. I honestly like people use that word all the time when I think gaslighting is really serious, and I think that it's used in a way that is not actually true gaslighting in some circumstances. But so, anyways, you have these terms that I think then it does more harm than good when you're but it's in someone's mind supporting their behavior. An
Yeah.
example would be like someone saying like in an unhealthy relationship, like let's say they get mad and they don't talk to their partner for a week because they're mad. Like, and then their partner says, like, we need to talk about this. We haven't been talking for a week. That person says, let me feel my feelings. I need to feel my feelings. Like it feels a little bit like that. Like, sure, yes, you do. But this also is not healthy either. And like you can feel what you feel again, feel your feelings. Like, but like we're not going to not talk to our spouse for an entire week. Um,
Perfect. So, and I know you know this, but what you just brought up is called stonewalling, and
yes.
it is one of the four predictors of a relationship not lasting. And it's
Mhm.
also very common. It's one of the more common ones. And now it is okay to take a break from an argument, but the
Yeah.
silent treatment, not being willing to come back to the conversation, that's when stonewalling is
Yeah.
detrimental.
You have to come back and like not like weeks later necessarily. I mean,
Yeah, like as soon as you can regulate.
yes, as soon as you can regulate.
So I just want to speak to boundary. Like there kind of blew up. I think it was Jonah Hill, who
Oh yeah.
released text or whatever, and he was using the word boundaries. And you know, he famously went to therapy and then televised it or whatever. I haven't watched it yet. I heard it was good.
Really?
It's on Netflix. But he was sort of saying it would be like if Zach was like, "You going to Magic Mike is crossing my boundaries," and
Yes.
that is not a boundary. That's an expectation. It might even be an ultimatum, but it is not a boundary just because it affects his emotions.
Yes, that is a great example. Yes, it's not, but people use that all the time as like, this is my boundary when it's not, that's not an appropriate use of that term and it's not healthy either. But so back to Vegas,
They scoop everyone up into the limo, and then it becomes clear that they're heading to Chippendales.
which Jen is not happy. And I would like to go back for a moment to the montage of the ladies packing and introducing their spouse to the idea that they might go to a Magic Mike show. Then, when they were at the Airbnb or wherever they were, the VRBO, whatnot, the house in Vegas, and Dakota and Zach were there, and they were like, "Would you be okay if, like, maybe we go to a Magic Mike show?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." No, you can't.
Which
And
Macy picks up on and is like, he actually cares. He's trying to be cool in front of the group.
yes, and then when the guys are gone, Jesse says, Like, everyone get ready for tonight. We're going to do something fun. Jen says, is this something, I forgot how she asked the question, but it's something like, is this something that our husbands would approve of? Or, and then I don't think she says exactly, but like along those lines. And Jesse was like, in God's eyes, this is fine because my God is chill as fuck. She says something like that.
Yeah.
So, like, Jen, are you surprised you're going to Chippendales? Like, what's happening here? Like, I do not understand that.
No, that's true. That's true. I had a different approach to what I was going to say, but that is true that it isn't totally clear that they're going or not going, but it seems like everybody's aware it's a possibility, whether or not they've floated it or they're just like, what do women do in Vegas on a TV show?
You're on a party.
Sure.
The party bus isn't taking you to a nice dinner. Like, I just don't.
Okay, so that is all fair, and I'll mull that over. That is true. But I
Okay.
do want to say this. What I think is like the second pattern of this that this is creating is Jesse in particular is pushing boundaries that she should know Jen is not comfortable with. And
Yes.
instead of being direct or open or being like, is this okay? Or even like, can we like talking her into it or whatever, she just like dumps it on her so that it's sort of like, don't ask permission, ask for forgiveness or whatever. And so that is frustrating to me because I do think it puts Jen in this very difficult spot. Like Mormons from a young age are trained to like walk out of a party or a movie if it gets dirty, be brave about your standards and stuff like this. So I can really sort of like empathize with probably how hard this is for Jen to figure out like I'm on the show, I'm in business, this is part of all of that, yada yada yada, and I know it's going to cause problems. I don't know how she personally feels about it because I think most of her resistance isn't about her values as much as it's about her husband. And that's
Yes.
a problem.
Because she said in the conversation earlier when they were at home packing to Zach, like, when she said, would you be okay with Magic Mike? Like, it just would be like fun, silly, like ridiculous or something like that, which tells how she probably actually views it, but
Yeah.
he's upset. Now, I will say, I can appreciate even if you think your partner is being absolutely ridiculous, if your partner says, I don't love this, like, I think it's okay to be like, okay, I don't have to do it. Like, I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think you should think it's a big deal, but I'm hearing you say you feel uncomfortable. Well, I think that that's ridiculous. Like the Magic Mike. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I do think that that's okay to also be like, okay, you know what? Like, if you're telling me this now, I think if it's like this like chronic pattern, we can then talk about like the toxicity that is there. But yes, but like I think it's okay to say, listen, like I understand that this is not, you're not going to cheat on me. But like I don't love it, and so okay, I don't have to do it.
I mean, that's true because if you have a partner who's going to an actual strip club, I cannot imagine enjoying a strip club. I don't like to be aroused like with my friends or like whatever. Like
So fascinating with me. I'm like, why do people like men? Like, I mean, are you guys getting aroused like with like next to your buddy? Like that seems weird to me. But anyway, sorry. I
I
digress.
So ultimately, I would say I would not want to seek out a strip club. And yet, if I was going to a bachelor party, or if like the thing that was going to happen is like we're going to go to a strip club, even that to me, I think my partner would understand as just like it's just what we did. I didn't do anything inappropriate there. It's not like I went to be aroused. I went because we could say we went to a strip club. This is even further from a strip club to me, right? Like this is literally a choreographed, staged show that is for an audience. Like it's just, yeah, I agree with you. It's very ridiculous, but I do agree with you. Like if you're in a relationship with somebody, you have to figure out and make some, compromises on each other's comfort.
I think Jesse was probably trying to push the limits and like hope that everyone would just cave in and go if she maybe didn't tell them. I also sort of wonder if like I could picture a scenario where she's talking to the producers like I really want all of us to go and enjoy the show and I don't know whether I should give people a heads up or not, and the producers like, just what do you want to do? Like have them all go, like just don't tell them, let it be a surprise. Okay, I'll let it be a surprise. Like I could see something like that happening, but I think it would have been cool if she had said, listen, like two options tonight. You can go out to dinner over here, or you can come with me to the Chippendales. Who's in? And have sort of like two options for people's level of comfort. What's interesting to me about this is if you are Jen And this is what essentially happened, this is the part that blows my mind. If you are Jen and you are like, oh, I'm not happy that we are going to a Chippendales. I, for some reason, didn't think we were going to do that. I'm just going to hang here. I'm not going to go. Like, that's fine. You guys have fun. I'll hang on the bus. And then it's not a big deal. But that's where the problem is, because that's what she did. And Zach still lost his shit.
Yeah.
And she didn't even go. She sat on the bus. And so Michaela also didn't go. And neither did Taylor. So it was the three of them. Michaela is like silent. Like, you don't hear Michaela's storyline of like her husband's really upset because she's like was sitting outside of a Chippendales performance.
Right.
But it was, so that's where to me it got super toxic, that Dakota and Zach still freaked out to the level versus like, hey, I'm really sorry that you guys had to sit out, but thank you for doing that because I do not feel comfortable with that. Cool, we're good. But they freaked out at the thought that they considered it, or that they were basically forced to drive there. And to me, that's where it became very toxic.
Totally. Yeah. It's wild. And it's kind of, I mean, I don't know. I guess I would want to know, like, as a sample size, how many people are there? Six, seven women? So
Mhm.
of six, seven relationships, maybe not everyone's in a relationship, but two of them exhibit this like highly jealous, insecure, toxic behavior. That's not great odds. It's not a great showing for Mormon men for sure, or whatever these guys are. It's just wild, or men in general.
Yeah.
Jen gets on the phone and he's saying stuff like, I don't want to be married to you if this is how you're going to be, and blah, blah, blah. His neck bulge probably hidden by his new shirt. Like, while he's doing all of this, it's just insane.
One of the things they don't talk, or maybe they did and I missed it, but one of the things I was curious about, I could totally see Zach being all like, you know what? She's going to think about going to Chippendales. I'm going to spend way more than $2,500 that she gave me. I'm going to give. And they didn't talk about that. And maybe that didn't happen, but for some reason, I kind of got the vibe because what was it? Dakota went outside at some point, and maybe this is the next episode. I don't remember, but Dakota went outside and was like talking to another friend because Zach was like in there gambling. He's like, this is just really hard for me. Uh, I was like, Zach probably is like, F it. Like, you went to Chippendales, but didn't actually go, but like thought about it. Like, I'm going to spend as much as I want. I'll show you.
Totally. Oh my gosh. It's interesting too. I think there's slightly different approaches. Like Taylor calls Dakota to tell him right away, which might even be how Zach finds out. But to me, I saw this slightly different dynamic where like Taylor's already like, give me a reason to not trust you. She's like, drop. I could see her just being like,
Cared less.
I ended up at Chippendales. Now what are you going to do? And honestly, you could say she's actually giving him opportunities to prove himself otherwise, but he doesn't. It's always the same reaction, which is just like, you're so wrong. That's so bad. It's so disrespectful. And meanwhile, it's funny because there's this scene like they're rubbing oil on the chiseled abs and pecs of like these men. But I'm just like, it's so funny to watch these guys be so insecure, so threatened, not understand the concept of like how this plays into the business, while their wives sort of like flirt with like what are probably gay dancers. Like they're threatened
Yes.
by entertainers who are probably sleeping with each other, if anyone.
Well, and I think this leads into the next episode, which I know we're just covering episode 6, but I think in the next episode, Taylor or Dakota says he's talking on the phone with the guy. I don't remember which guy. I think maybe one of the other husbands. And he says something like, all I can envision is these male strippers dancing on Taylor while she is 36 weeks pregnant with my kid. What is Taylor going to do? Like I mean, not to say you can do whatever you want at 36 weeks pregnant, but she has voiced multiple times that she is tired. I doubt she is going home with one of these male strippers. And as you mentioned, they're likely gay. So like, it's fine.
Taylor,
Um,
multiple moments when people are being silly or whatever, and it shows Taylor, and she's not like angry, but she's also not entertained. She's just tired. She's being a good sport by being there at all, honestly.
Yes, she is. She really is. And so I think that concludes episode 6.
It does. So what we'll be looking for in the next episode is a continuation of like this Vegas trip and the aftermath of these jealous boys. We're also going to hear Macy continue to struggle with like whether or not to tell this secret. So she's now told some of the other women about it, and she really does seem upset about whether or not to tell Taylor, not because she doesn't think she deserves to know, but literally she's like, she could go into labor if I upset her. Like she's actually being thoughtful of what Taylor's going through while also really feeling like she probably needs to know this.
Yes.
So we'll see what she does with that information, and we will find out, will Mom Talk survive
Will it?
Whitney's homesteading?
Maybe she'll invite the girls out.
That's right. They can milk the goats or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, great to see you.
Good seeing you. See you next time.